It's a pleasure and a real joy to be interviewing Dr. Brad Wilcox today. Brad is the Melville Foundation Jefferson Scholars Foundation University Professor. That's a mouthful, right
Yeah.
there. University Professor of Sociology and the Director of the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia. Also, he is the director of the Get Married Initiative. I'm very interested to hear what that is at the Institute for the Family. He's the author of Get Married: Why Americans Should Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization. If you don't have it, get it. He studies marital quality, marital stability, and the impact of strong and stable marriages upon men, women, and children. He's the author and editor of 6 books. He's written for scientific journals such as the American Sociological Review, the Journal of Marriage and Family, as well as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Atlantic, and National Review. You have an accomplished pedigree, dear brother. Could you tell us just a little bit about your own background and how you got into such a profession?
Yeah, thanks, Father Josiah. So I was raised by a single mother, and in college, actually as an undergraduate at the University of Virginia, really came to think about the ways in which, dads mattered for their kids.
Sure.
Not having a father growing up, in my own household for much of my life was pretty formative for me. And then kind of also appreciating as an undergraduate, studying under James Hunter, my colleague now in sociology at UVA, that marriage was that institution that connected men to their children. So, kind of that intellectual insight in college led me then to sort of pursue a career in sociology, studied sociology at Princeton under Robert Wuthnow and Sarah McClanahan, looking at religion, culture, and family at Princeton, and then got a job teaching sociology at the University of Virginia, where I've been now for about 23 years. But
Incredible.
thinking about these kind of, both from a personal and professional perspective, the importance of marriage and fatherhood for both kids, for adults, and for the larger common weal or common good. And then I've also been shaped by what's called a kind of neo-functional perspective in sociology, with thinkers like Emil Durkheim inspiring my approach to the sociology of family.
You sound very blessed to be able to combine a great personal interest with an academic calling as well, and a vocation where you can actually pursue something that's so important to you. How wonderful. Could you tell us, dear brother, that this is this just theoretical in your mind, or is it also you're a married man?
Yes, I'm married.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Does your wife have anything to do with your professional life?
Well, she's certainly one of my wisest, I think, critics and advisors, of
Yeah.
course. And she always rolls her eyes too when when I'm sort of asked questions about, marital happiness and marital stability and marital quality. I mean, just, uh, she's obviously in some ways wiser than I am in this department. So yeah, so she's a big figure in my thinking. And then we have 9 children together, and they keep us very busy as well, as you can imagine.
How old are your children?
They are 25 to 12.
Have they been able to take their father's wise counsel in this area?
Not yet. So we have our oldest, I think, is certainly kind of, giving thought to marriage, but we haven't yet had any kids get married.
It's uh it's hard to be a dad and an expert on relationships.
100%. Yeah, it requires a
Yeah.
lot of humility. When I was a grad student at Princeton, I thought that I was the world's greatest expert on fatherhood before having any children. And now I'm a much humbler, um, expert on marriage and fatherhood, having been married 30 years with 9 kids.
Incredible. Well, you've been fruitful and have multiplied. You have a very full quiver. Glory to God.
Thank you.
What is the Institute for Family Studies? I have been on your mailing list for a number of years and have profited by regularly receiving incredible articles on a very broad range of subjects regarding marriage and the family. But I don't know what IFS is.
So the Institute really is dedicated to three things. One is to sort of understanding what's happening to marriage and family, especially in America, but really across the globe. Secondly, is to educating the public about the power and the value of getting married and having and raising a family. And then the third kind of objective we have at IFS is to advance public policies, to educate policymakers, about policies that can be helpful in forging strong and stable families, particularly here in the US, but even globally as well. And in connection with those three goals, we have three different, basically, um, sort of foci now at IFS. The first is on marriage, and I head up that initiative, as you mentioned just a moment ago. Then we have a new initiative called the Pronatalism Initiative, which is headed up by my colleague Lyman Stone, a demographer. And then we have a new initiative as well on family and technology, headed up by Michael Toscano. And so these three initiatives are focusing on, we sort of review as three key um, domains of family life today. One, of course, is marriage. The second is kind of understanding and appreciating the value of having children in a day and age when fertility is falling. And then the third issue we're thinking about a lot is that the nexus between family and technology, recognizing that I think technology poses a profound, that sort of the digital revolution poses a profound threat to marriage and the family. And so we're just trying to
Yes.
help people understand that threat at IFS.
How long has IFS been in existence?
So a couple of colleagues and I founded it around 2013. That was when kind of things got off the ground.
So, what is its exact relationship to the University of Virginia?
It is a separate nonprofit. It is, we have certainly students from UVA who are involved with IFS. I'm involved with IFS as well, but it's a separate nonprofit, and we have scholars and public intellectuals and sort of collaborators working with IFS from really across the United States.
And are you yourself, it has its own board. Are you a member of the board?
No, I am not,
Okay,
but we do have a board that oversees IFS.
fantastic. Does IFS publish a regular journal,
We
or is it
don't
all
publish.
online?
Yeah, we don't publish a journal, but we have a regular blog called Family Studies, and that publishes new articles Monday through Thursday typically. And then we also kind of offer reports on a regular basis, tackling things like how best to promote higher fertility, or how best to reduce the cost of housing in the United States, or how best to think about the relationship between family structure and kids' technological consumption and well-being as well. So these kinds of
Gotcha.
topics are regularly
All
featured.
matters familial, basically.
Essentially, yes.
I have greatly benefited by reading your incredible text. Am I right to think that this was a bestseller in 2024? Get Married?
It did well. I wouldn't say it certainly didn't break the top 10 in the New York Times, but it did well and was also kind of featured in platforms like the Times, 5 times New York Times, multiple times Wall Street Journal, National Review, Fox News, NPR. So a wide range of different media outlets across the spectrum kind of grappled with many of the themes that I raised in Get Married.
I found it to be exceedingly enriching and full of incredible information I did not know on a variety of subjects. You're taking, I should say the whole full title for those who are watching, Get Married, subtitled Why Americans Must Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization. I wanted to ask you about that subtitle. Could you explain a little bit about what you mean by defy the elites?
Yeah, it's funny when the title first came online, a number of critics, including Matt Iglesias, a very kind of thoughtful center left, journalist with a big Substack following today, said, Brad, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
The elites today are doing better on the family front than the non-elites, if you will. And that's true when you look at kind of, trends in marriage and family stability. Better educated, more affluent Americans are more likely to forge strong and stable families. But my point in the book is actually a different one. That is that elites are often sort of saying things that are not helpful or that are not true, that are kind of leading us in the wrong direction on the family front. And of course, the irony in this particular case is that Iglesias had written a headline in um, Slate, a prominent kind of publication that was sort of discounting marriage in a different day and age, and then a separate one for Fox that kind of also is sort of discounting the importance of marriage. And yet I'm imagining he's stably married. They have a son, his wife and he have a son together. I'm sure he's a good husband and a good father. But my point in the book is that there are plenty of people out there in the journalistic worlds and in the academic worlds, in Hollywood, and now Silicon Valley, who kind of have a big cultural impact as producers, directors, executives, journalists, professors. That is not really very marriage friendly, very family friendly, even though they often in their own private lives are leading what I would call kind of family first lives. And so the book is just underlying the way in which our elites are often kind of giving us messages in the society today that are not conducive to forging a strong and stable marriage.
What would you say was the beginning of a culture walking away from a pro-family uh, promotion? When did that start in your mind?
I think really, especially in the late 60s and 70s, there were many different cultural factors, as you know, cultural currents related to individualism, related to secularism, related to certain strands of feminism, that really kind of pushed us away from what I would call a more familistic orientation and culture and towards a much more individualistic,
Yes.
and that's the kind of, I think, time frame when a lot of the patterns move in the wrong direction. Tom Wolfe, of course, called the 70s the sort of the me decade. And this is also the decade when divorce, for instance, really takes off. So that's sort of where I would put kind of the turn culturally that we're going to be addressing in California next month.
You say we need to forge strong families. What is the definition of a strong family?
So in the book, I really look at marital quality, marital happiness, and marital stability as sort of two ways of thinking about both strong marriages and stable marriages. And we could obviously think, we could look at different indicators, but I just sort of use reports of marital happiness and reports of marital stability as, two indicators to kind of signal both, again, strong and stable marriages and families. And it's important to note that, in the book, I find that both marriage in general and a happy marriage in particular is often, the best predictor of adult meaning and happiness in America, depending upon the data set.
Yeah. And if we do this, you're suggesting that we can actually save civilization. I love how that sounds. Uh, I do think that our culture desperately needs to be saved before we destroy ourselves. Can we do that actually? If we forge strong families, this is going to lead to the saving of civilization? How?
Yeah, so when we think about, for instance, that famous passage in the Declaration, where Jefferson writes about the importance of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm actually seated here in Charlottesville, kind of with Monticello, Jefferson's home, just kind of in the distance. I'm always mindful of this phrase from the Declaration, but I think it is a kind of, it's a sort of an important phrase for our thinking about the American civilization. And when it comes to life, for instance, what we see obviously is that fertility has fallen dramatically in recent decades to a record low of 1.6 babies per month on average, well below the replacement rate. When it comes to liberty, we know that too many Americans are born poor and die poor. They don't have access to that kind of classic American dream, that rags to riches, story playing out. And then what we're seeing too is that happiness in America is down, whether you're looking at Gallup data or what's called the General Social Survey, Father. And when you look at these three kind of key trends, as kind of markers with reference to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, they all kind of bring us back to marriage and family. And so what we see is that really kind of one of the biggest factors that accounts for declines in fertility is drop in the marriage rate in America. When it comes to this lack of mobility for poor kids being stuck in poverty across the life course, one of the biggest factors there is the large share of single parent families in too many communities across the US. And then finally, on the happiness front, we've got good new research from an economist at the University of Chicago telling us that the number one factor in his models accounting for declines in happiness is the fact that fewer Americans are finding their way to the altar, getting married, staying married. So I think what we're going to talk about, next month in October is just the way in which the health of our civilization depends so much on strong families and on good marriages.
Somehow that message has been surgically removed from the national conversation. It's amazing to me. Not anybody who's been living in a stable marriage that they've invested in knows that it's true. But culturally speaking, that we're not taught that. We're taught that somehow you're going to be unhappy, you're going to be working all the time, you're going to be poor, your kids are going to be a huge burden on you. And so happiness is going to be seriously retarded if you actually invest in children. You have been studying this for years now. Do you see, are you gaining traction? Is the truth on this gaining traction and we're altering the national conversation? Or are we still a minority?
Well, I think there are certainly many important voices, Father Josiah, in our culture today who are kind of steering the conversation in a new and better direction. So this is even the center left. I spoke um, to David Leonhardt, for instance, at the New York Times about these matters, and he's written, I think, uh, kind of well on these questions. The same thing is true for Nick Kristof at the New York Times, a columnist, David Brooks as well at the New York Times. So I think there are some kind of voices in the center and the center left who are open to hearing this message and kind of communicating it to their audiences. And then on the right, there's just been a kind of explosion of discussion about marriage and family in the wake of the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, as I think, as
Yes.
you know and appreciate. At his funeral, I can't tell you how many people, from Secretary of State Rubio to Erica Kirk, his widow, to the vice president, who kind of emphasized Kirk's own message about the importance of getting married, having children, living a legacy, and pursuing kind of authentic joy. There's this big phrase that he articulates, Charlie Kirk articulates, or articulate, I should say, in connection with that whole idea. So I do think, in the last really 14 days, we have heard even more um, messaging from leaders on the right about the importance of getting married and forming a family, having a family. So I do think we may be primed for some kind of turning point, on the marriage and family front here in America.
Yes, I sure hope that's the case. I have been very surprised, positively moved to have people are calling Charlie's statements and his words about marriage and family life. I knew that he was very pro-family. I knew he was very happily married, but I was not aware of some of the very strong statements that he said about the centrality of marriage. And if he could have anything, it would be that America would return to the embrace of the centrality of the family. That just deeply moved me. I really hope that. Did you yourself have any interactions with Charlie on this subject?
Not directly, but he did do an interview over the summer where he referenced our research, IFS research, on the connection between marriage and women's happiness. And we also just did a study on women and happiness and marriage and family, showing that the happiest women in America are married mothers. And that was actually written up in the Atlantic by my colleague Jean Twenge. And in the week before his death, he tweeted out, a comment on this article in the Atlantic, and sort of made just a comment about, they're finally coming around to what we
Yeah,
all have known for, it was a
incredible.
it was a sort of a funny comment on Twitter.
I
But
didn't know
anyways,
that Jean
yeah.
Twenge was your colleague. I have benefited so greatly from her work. How do you collaborate?
So she's a psychologist at San Diego State University and
Right.
one of America's top experts really on sort of teens in tech. She's got a new book out on teens in tech that's just come out. And yeah, we've done some work on the impact of technology on children and families, also some work on policies that we think can be attractive to legislators on the left and the right who are looking for tools, policy levers to pull to, protect our kids from big tech.
How wonderful. Well, I can tell you, we out here on the West Coast are exceedingly anxious to receive you for our marriage conference. For those who are watching us, our conference, you can find out more about it. It's October 10th and 11th. This marriage conference is going to be hosted at our historic Fox Theater here in downtown Riverside. And Dr. Wilcox will be one of the speakers, together with a kind of an array of pro-family competent orators, including Archbishop Cordileone, Jonathan Pageau, myself, Gavin Ordland, from a broad collage of traditions, but all family-centered, wanting to uphold marriage and kind of unveil its magnificence, unveil its beauty, since it speaks for itself, being such a magnificent creation of God. So if you're interested in coming to this conference, dear ones, you can just go to themarriageconference.com and you can sign up. There's still seats left. And you can come and see Dr. Wilcox in person. If you buy a VIP ticket, he'll even shake your hand and talk to you for a few minutes. Thank you so much, Brad, for your time. Can't wait to host you and to know you personally.
Thanks for that, Josiah. It's my pleasure.
God be with you.
Thank you.